however principled, can take from him what it actually felt like to be Diana's son. His claim to her story is not borrowed, it is not unlicensed, it is cellular. It belongs to him in a way it will never belong to Netflix or a production company or a streaming algorithm. Both positions are true simultaneously. Both of them hurt, so stand in each pair of shoes before you decide. You are William. The most painful event of your childhood, the law privilege was actually for, is being treated as property that belongs to gatekeepers and institutions rather than to the boy who was there. The boy who lost her, the man who still carries her. Both positions are human. Both have legitimate weight. And if you are searching for a villain in this story, it does not live in Althorp. It does not live in Montecito. It does not live in Kensington Palace. It lives in the apparatus that looks at a dead woman's handwritten diaries and calculates their streaming value. It lives in the machinery that wraps itself around grief and converts it into quarterly targets and launch windows and brand extensions. That is that altered the entire shape of your life, is scheduled as a content drop with a premiere date by your own brother's production partners. The grief you have spent 30 years managing privately is being packaged for a global audience without your consent. And there is nothing you can do about it that does not make the headline worse. Now you are Harry, the story of your own mother, the woman who pulled you by the hand through places that were designed to show you where the problem lives. Not with the son who wants to tell his story. Not with the uncle who refuses to open the vault. With the industry that turns both of their pain into product and calls it tribute. And I can assure you that this is not the end. If anything, this is just the beginning, and we are just getting started. Here is the question I want you to carry out of this video. Is it ever right to spend Diana's legacy as currency, even by her own son? On paper, it sounds extraordinary. The project the world has been waiting for. And by these accounts, Netflix responded to the idea with immediate enthusiasm. But here is what it reportedly required. It wanted Althorp itself. The childhood home. The grounds. The island where Charles Spencer buried his sister. The private island in the lake that she specifically chose because it was beyond the reach of cameras and crowds and institutions. It wanted the private family archives, not the photographs that have already circulated, not the footage already in the public domain. The real archive, the one no one has seen. It reportedly wanted Diana's personal, handwritten diary, one of Diana's cultural magnitude, anywhere in the world. She is, in a meaningful sense, the most famous person of her generation whose inner life remains genuinely unknown. And that is not an accident. That is a brother's work. So picture him sitting in his chair when a courier arrives with a proposal that wants all of it. The pitch. Let me lay out what that proposal reportedly contained. Because once you hear it in full, his siblings sell their siblings' secrets. Charles Spencer has maintained a cordon of privacy around his sister that has held for nearly 3 decades. Biographers have tried. Broadcasters have tried. Publishers with very large checkbooks have tried. The answer is always the same. You would not find a comparable archive. This carefully protected, this long undisturbed, belonging to any response stops looking like aristocratic stubbornness and starts looking like the only rational answer a man in his position could possibly give. The concept was a grand anniversary documentary for 2027, marking 30 years since Paris. Emotional, cinematic, intended to be definitive, fronted by Diana's own son. And on a question this complicated, I genuinely want to know where you land. Subscribe if you are not already with us, because the next chapter is coming, and it is going to be one worth watching. Did Charles Spencer do the only thing a man in his position could do, or does Harry's grief give him a claim that no gatekeeper, however principled, however motivated by love, has the right to override? There is no clean answer, and anyone who gives you one quickly is not sitting with the full weight of the question. What we know is this: a man who has said nothing for nearly 30 years finally said something. Not in words, not in an interview or a memoir, or a press conference, in a refusal delivered privately, silently, and, precisely because of that silence, heard more clearly than almost anything else that has happened in this saga. The next chapter belongs to a Sussex operation that is now running low on options and low on credibility with the one person whose cooperation would have changed everything. What it does next, how it repositions, what it reaches for, how it tells its story without the originals, is a story that is still being written. A story with no obvious ending and no guaranteed audience waiting at the other end of it. And when it moves, we will be here to talk about it. If this video made you see any part of this story differently, drop your position in the comments. I read every one of the biggest night of her life. It felt like remembrance. It may even have felt like family. But then came the butterfly earrings, then the Cartier watch, then the gold bracelets, piece by piece, item by item. Each belonging that had once been Diana's surfaced on Meghan at precisely the moments where a photograph was not just likely, but absolutely guaranteed. Major public events, choreographed arrivals, maximum lens made him say no so loudly that the world heard it. And who sent it? It began the way so many things in this family begin. With something small, beautiful, and apparently innocent. The royal wedding, May 2018. The evening reception. Meghan Markle arrived wearing Diana's aquamarine ring, that distinctive, pale blue stone, recognizable to anyone who had ever followed Diana's story. From where Earl Spencer sat watching, it likely felt tender. Someone new, someone his nephew clearly adored, choosing to carry Diana into coverage. Now, and this needs to be said clearly, no one can prove the intention was anything other than genuine tribute. Grief is complicated, and Meghan had married into one of the most emotionally complex families in history. Wearing your late mother-in-law's jewelry is not evidence of strategy. It is, on its own, a perfectly human thing to do. But sit with the harder question. When does tribute become a pattern? When does pattern start to look like a deliberate choice? Once is tribute, twice is habit. Every single time, at precisely the moments designed for maximum camera coverage, starts to look like something else entirely. And the man at Althorp was paying attention. He was cataloging every frame. Because these items were not just jewelry, they were pieces of Diana's story, and they were being placed in someone else's narrative without a single conversation with the person who holds the originals. But when Diana's own brother refuses, the man who stood in that abbey, who made that vow, who has blood ties to both princes and no office to protect, that is something completely different. That is family honor, and nobody in the Sussex communications apparatus can spin it. There is only one person in this entire story with standing, credibility, blood connection to Diana, and absolutely nothing to gain from saying no. No palace role, no institutional loyalty. No pub. He watched the Oprah interview. He has eyes, but look at his position. He is the future king. Every move he makes carries institutional consequence. He cannot publicly block his own brother's projects without manufacturing a headline about palace censorship and a family at war. The moment the institution intervenes, it reads as the establishment protecting itself, the same establishment Diana spent her life fighting. When the palace blocks something, it is the machine defending the machine. Public image to protect, no book to sell. The one person who could draw this line without it being weaponized against the crown was the one person who never needed to speak to anyone, and royal watchers noticed. Some reportedly framed it as the most significant act by anyone connected to Diana in years. Not because of what it revealed, but because of what it refused to reveal. Others called it a quiet act of war. What no one called it, and this is the telling detail, was a surprise. The people who track Earl Spencer's movements, who understand the architecture of his silence, who have followed the 30-year pattern of refusals, not one of her, and in closing it, made his position unmistakable to everyone paying attention. For a man who had guarded that silence for 30 years, the refusal itself was the loudest thing he had ever said outside Westminster Abbey. Why experts responded the way they did. Within days, according to recent reporting, royal commentators were framing the refusal in terms far beyond a failed business negotiation. Some called it a verdict. Here is why that framing matters. Consider the architecture of power in this story. Prince William has reportedly been privately unhappy for years about the way his mother's image has been commercialized. He watched the streaming series. From ordinary family days that were never meant to be extraordinary. The raw, unguarded Diana. The one that exists in no documentary, no biography, no Netflix series. That woman is still private. She survives only because one man kept saying no. What makes that discipline genuinely remarkable and genuinely rare is that the financial incentives to do the opposite have never been small. The offers, by all accounts, have been consistent, lavish, and presented by people skilled at making compromise feel like wisdom. Publishers, broadcasters, streaming giants with 9-figure content budgets, and teams of producers who specialize in making the unthinkable feel reasonable. The pitch is always some version of the same thing. The world deserves to know her properly. You can control how it's done. You can shape the narrative. Better you than someone who gets it wrong. And Charles Spencer, for 30 years, has responded to every version of that argument with the same answer. He does not need the money. Figures in the history of celebrity. And through all of it, Charles Spencer has never once opened the vault, never sold the archive, never given the interview that cracks even an inch of it open, never licensed the grounds at Althorp for anything beyond what he felt was appropriate. The world has had decades to wonder what is in that archive. Handwritten diaries, home movies, privately taken photographs from her childhood. He does not need the profile, and he does not believe the world's desire to consume Diana is the same thing as the world's right to consume her. That is a distinction almost no one else in this story has been willing to make, and it is the distinction that defines everything he has done since that abbey. So the real question, the question royal experts have been sitting with, is what was in that proposal that met Westminster Abbey, or the woman that nephew married. 30 years in which the entire planet dissected, dramatized, and monetized his sister.
A home of some sort in order to get better. I was almost an embarrassment.
While he stood behind a locked gate in Northamptonshire and said nothing. Then a courier arrived at Althorp with a proposal, and Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer, the man who has guarded Diana's private world with an almost monastic discipline, finally had something to say.
Wonderful person we just lost. And if in comparison to that, other people felt badly about it, well, that was really not my issue. I was trying to just...
Because this was not simply a documentary deal falling through. This was something far more loaded. This was the last blood guardian of Diana's memory.
The princess, who spent her life in the relentless glare of the public eye, died in a speeding car in Paris, apparently trying to evade pursuing photography.
Drawing a line, publicly, unmistakably, between what his sister's legacy truly was and what it was being turned into. And the people it affected most were not the palace. They were Harry and Meghan.
Object in life was to be Diana. That has always been her passion.
And her idea of elegance is phony to the nth degree.
The obvious reality that my sister wasn't around anymore, and I wanted to speak for her honestly and truly and fully. And that was it, really. That's all I tried to do.
30 years of silence. Not a single interview. Not a memoir.
In fact, in the final paragraph, I had run out of energy and almost out of oxygen. I know it sounds rather overdramatic, but...
Not a memoir. Not one public comment on the nephew he raised up in his arms.
Be loyal to Diana.
His answer, according to recent reporting, was a flat, unambiguous refusal. No negotiation, no counteroffer, no let's talk, just no. And in a man defined by silence, that single word hit the royal world like a thunderclap. Within days, royal experts were dissecting what it meant and shipped as the next streaming product. That is the real inheritance of this saga. Not a documentary, not a deal, not a refusal. but two brothers who cannot find a road back to each other, and a family watching from behind a gate at Althorp that stays locked. The gate will stay locked because the man who holds the key has decided, with perfect consistency, what his job is. His job is not to be an obstacle. His job is not to be anti-Sussex. His job, the job he assigned himself in Westminster Abbey, in front of 2 billion appetite, reportedly extends almost nowhere where Meghan is concerned. And sources close to the family have reportedly been consistent about why, reducing it to a single word: trust. There is none. The family's deepest stated concern is reportedly not Meghan's criticism of them, not her anger, not her public characterization of the institution. It is her content calendar. The worry that any private conversation, any dinner, any honest exchange, any moment of genuine family connection becomes raw, material, filed, packaged, positioned in people, in September of 1997, is to protect Diana. And protecting Diana in 2026 means protecting what is left of the Diana that the world has never consumed. There are those who argue that position has calcified into something more than protection, that it has become, over the years, a kind of possession, that no man, however principled, however motivated by love and guilt in equal measure, has the moral authority to determine in perpetuity what another person's memory is worth, and to whom it may be shown. Larger than the last, each one made without a word to the man who holds the account. And the final withdrawal, the biggest of all, bounced. The fracture that hasn't moved. Now let us look at where things actually stand. Because the royal family's internal landscape is important context here. By recent accounts, there may be some appetite, cautious, fragile, extremely limited, for a partial thaw with Harry. A degree of private communication, a tentative acknowledgement that the relationship is not entirely beyond repair. But that in their Montecito home, watching the rescue flare they had sent up come right back down in flames. Stay with me, because this story moves through time, through grief, through jewelry, through a confession, and through one of the most closely guarded private archives in the modern royal era. And by the end of it, you will understand why the man who never speaks just delivered the loudest verdict of the Sussex saga. The man who disappeared. To understand what Charles Spencer did with that proposal, her naturalness, the genuine quality of her compassion. And then he made the promise, the one that echoed out through the nave, pulled applause in from the streets outside, and stopped every person in that building cold. He promised that Diana's sons would be shielded from the cold, dysfunctional machinery that had chewed their mother apart. He promised that her blood family, the Spencers, would never allow the institution to swallow them the way it had swallowed her. He said it directly, from that lectern, to the Queen's face, to Prince Philip's face, to the future king sitting just a few feet away. He didn't flinch once, and then he walked back to Althorp and, for the most part, disappeared. That is the foundation. That long, deliberate, almost eerie invisibility is exactly what gives his recent actions such extraordinary weight. We live in a media culture built entirely around Diana's image. Her face appears on magazine covers, on stamps, on memorial merchandise, on streaming thumbnails. She is one of the most commercially reproduced. You first have to understand what kind of man was holding it. Most people who know the name Charles Spencer know exactly one moment. The 6th of September, 1997, Westminster Abbey. A global television audience of roughly 2 billion people. A young man in a dark suit at a lectern, his voice controlled, but his eyes carrying something raw, something that had no business being restrained. And then the words came. He spoke about his sister as a very British girl. He spoke about her laughter, landed on 2 stars, characterizing it as an exercise in narcissism padded with extravagant brunches and branding exercises. And then came The Guardian, a publication that had long been sympathetic to Meghan, no friend to the monarchy, the outlet most predisposed to give the series a generous reading. It awarded a single star. Netflix's own internal rankings for the back half of 2025 reportedly placed the series at number 1,217. When the entire spectrum of press coverage, from the sympathetic left them expressed shock. The surprise, if there was any, was that the proposal was made at all, that anyone in Montecito, with even basic research available to them, looked at this man's 30-year record and concluded that this time would be different. That grief, or blood, or the weight of a Netflix contract would open what every publisher, every broadcaster, every documentary maker had failed to open. That said something, perhaps the most revealing thing of all, about the state of judgment inside the Sussex operation at the moment the courier was dispatched. Either way, the man who never speaks had finally been heard. To the skeptical right converges on the same verdict. That is not a review problem. That is a product problem. And here is the single detail that sharpens that picture most sharply. The couple's debut documentary, the one about their royal exit, their relationship, their decision to step back, remains one of the most watched debuts in Netflix's history. Everything produced since has met steadily cooler responses. The message from the numbers could not be clearer. The world is not buying Meghan's lifestyle brand. The world is buying royal wounds, the only Sussex product that has what this means for the Sussex operation. To understand why that documentary mattered so desperately, you have to look at where Harry and Meghan's media empire actually stood heading into 2026. It is not a flattering picture. The lifestyle series with Love, Meghan, the flagship project that was supposed to consolidate her brand and establish her as a cultural voice in her own right, became the iceberg it was meant to avoid. The Times gave it 2 stars and described it, in a phrase that has become something of an epitaph, as surely dull. The Telegraph also Times. Except for one critical difference, and it is the most telling detail in the entire comparison. Diana gave her 1995 interview while she was still trapped, still inside the system. No exit in sight. No resources beyond what the institution allowed. Everything to lose. That interview was a genuine cry from inside a locked room. The 2021 version was filmed from a villa in California. After the exit, with a production apparatus already in motion, a streaming empire already in development, a brand already taking shape. The original was distress. The remake, whatever else you believe about it, was a launch. And watching it from the Althorp sitting room, Charles Spencer did not experience that hour as tribute, but to understand why it cut him so deeply, why it crossed a line that the jewelry had only approached. You have to know a secret about this man, one that most mainstream royal coverage never touches. The secret guilt. This is the part of the story that changes a former Supreme Court justice, exactly how those documents were obtained. They were forgeries, fabricated from scratch, fake bank statements designed to convince a frightened, isolated woman that everyone around her was an enemy, that her only safe move was to sit in front of a camera and bleed for the nation. Diana's vulnerability in that interview was not a side effect of the broadcast. Everything. By long-standing, well-documented accounts, it was Charles Spencer himself who first brought his sister into contact with Martin Bashir, the journalist behind the 1995 Panorama interview. He believed he was doing something helpful. He had been shown documents, bank statements as far as he knew, evidence he had been told that people close to Diana were secretly being paid to spy on her, that she was surrounded by informants, that those she trusted most were being financially rewarded to betray her. He opened the door. And we now know, through a formal inquiry led by Lord Dyson, and now they wanted the originals, the diaries, the island, the home movies. The halo fitted to a new head. According to the reporting, he shut it down completely, refused any access to the archive. And here is the detail that royal watchers keep returning to. He did not call a press conference. He gave no interview. He released no statement. He did not say a word to a camera. He simply closed the doors. Pages written only for herself. pages she never intended anyone outside her most trusted. Circle to read. It wanted the home movies. The unguarded Diana. The private Diana. The laughing, ordinary human Diana that no documentary has ever touched. Without those, the documentary would be another recycled collection of footage that every Diana documentary since 1998 has already used. With them, it would be something entirely different. It would be the definitive portrait of the century. And then there was one more element, the one that made the pitch magnetic to the people, selling it and utterly unthinkable to the man reading it. The documentary reportedly wanted to draw a direct, explicit line between Diana's war with the institution and Meghan's. It wanted to position Meghan Markle as the modern continuation of Diana's story, the 21st-century version of the woman who refused to be silenced. Diana's halo, formally transferred on camera, with Diana's own family's blessing. Think about what Charles Spencer saw when he read that. He had watched the jewelry emerge, piece by piece, each item timed to a guaranteed lens. He had watched the Oprah interview, the panorama architecture rebuilt brick by brick, filmed from a California villa with a streaming empire already in motion. He had watched a documentary series in which a couple fleeing the press framed themselves as hunted by the same machinery that had destroyed Diana, without a single phone call to Althorp before filming began. Consume. She survives only because one man kept saying no, even as the whole world kept asking. The weight of that achievement is genuinely difficult to overstate. In an era where every private correspondence eventually surfaces, where estates are monetized by executors, where children sell their parents' letters and sip damaging media event of her existence, the interview that exposed her innermost pain to a global audience that consumed it like entertainment, walked in through a door you were tricked into. Opening. By every account, everything Charles Spencer has done since is an act of quiet, relentless atonement. The sealed archive, the year-after-year refusals, the decision to bury Diana on the island at Althorp rather than surrender her to any institution, the home movies that no one outside the family has seen, the handwritten diaries that no one outside the family has read. He has been making absolutely certain that nothing like Panorama can ever happen to Diana again. Not in life. She is gone. Not in death. Not now. Not ever. And in doing that, he achieved something almost no famous figure in the modern era has managed. He protected her mystery. There is a real Diana, unguarded, fully human, private, that the world never got to. Her vulnerability was the product. The manufactured distress was the point, and her younger brother, deceived by the same